You want to fly to Cleveland with me and test out the drones?
Cleveland?
Yeah. Chicago, Syracuse, Cleveland, Atlanta, and Boise.
Cleveland again.
Let's go back to
All roads lead to Cleveland this year.
That's right. Let's do it.
Too much Cleveland, as far as I'm concerned. Sorry, Mayor Bibb. Is Worcester close enough to Cleveland that
60 miles.
each hub covers roughly 175 square miles, which may be a slightly
That
different
would probably,
calculation?
I'm guessing they're not going to take deliveries and head north out of Cleveland. You know why? Geographically, that wouldn't make sense.
Over the lake?
It's Lake Erie up to Canada. So I don't think they're going into international airspace and dropping my batteries off in, Toronto or something.
What would happen with the tariffs in that situation?
Yeah, that's right. There are multiple problems there.
The customs,
multiple problems.
The customs drones would intercept.
Right.
Hi, and welcome to GeekWire. I'm GeekWire co-founder Todd Bishop.
And I'm GeekWire co-founder John Cook.
We are coming to you from Seattle, where we get to report each day on what's happening around us in business, technology, and innovation. What happens here matters everywhere, and every week on this show, we talk about some of the most interesting and important stories and trends in the news. I got to say, John, it's like not a slow August week this week.
Well, it was odd this week, wasn't it? I think Tuesday we were sitting around twiddling our thumbs, trying to find some stories to cover. In fact, the one story I really regret that we missed, which passed right along the Lake Washington Ship Canal.
Yes.
Was
huge miss.
Huge miss was
it was like a party boat or some sort of.
No, it was a tug from.
It was a tug?
Yeah,
I couldn't really see it through the trees.
Yeah, it was a massive tug boat from I think it was Crowley. I don't know the color schemes of the different tugs that go through, but what our listeners will tell us, the kind of the Pittsburgh Steelers colors.
Okay.
The gold and black.
John looked this up afterward and corrected himself. It was Western Towboat.
Cruising at what seemed like a solid pace through the Ship Canal, which is right in front of the GeekWire offices here in Fremont, with the Star Wars Imperial March blasting. I mean, we heard it from about many yards away, and we didn't run down to the Ship Canal fast enough to capture the image. Dun, 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 dun.
It was like reverberating through the corridor.
It was cool. It was so cool. It was such an awesome Seattle moment. I mean, really, you've got a tugboat cruising through the Lake Washington Ship Canal with the Imperial March on, blasting it. It was really neat, but we missed the video. So
what a summer we've had here.
I know,
from Mark Zuckerberg's boat to the World Cup, just a really amazing Seattle summer.
It has been. The one thing I really missed, which is another Ship Canal thing that occurred. The orcas.
I missed
Wouldn't
that
have been
too.
cool to see the orcas swimming around the
Ballard Locks.
Oh,
I will
wow.
say, though, of the two things that we could have seen, the marvels of nature that we could have seen in the locks this summer, I'm glad that we saw Launchpad, Mark Zuckerberg's
it was
yacht.
a story for us versus the orcas. But I would have personally rather seen the orcas than Mark Zuckerberg's gigantic yacht.
Hey, before we jump in, I will link from the show notes to the appearance that we teased last week that you ended up making on the Redman FC?
Redmen TV.
TV.
This is the Liverpool FC fan site, which I got to say, they do a fantastic job. Yeah. I mean, you were on the site a little bit. Yeah, boy, they produce some really high quality content.
And it's a small team, much like ours.
Yeah. Great conversation with them.
So I'll link to that. I could tell you were really into it.
I was really into it. Yeah. It was the highlight of one of the many highlights of my summer.
Coming up on this week's show, a reporter hides an AirTag, not one of us, not from GeekWire, but a reporter hides an AirTag in a rare book and follows it to a secret Amazon facility where the spines are cut off and the pages are scanned, apparently for some kind of AI model training purpose. Stick around for that. I was fascinated by this story. Also, John talks his way into an unmarked Bellevue office where Anduril is building autonomous weapons. And we'll talk all about that.
I'm not sure I talked my way into it. I was just persistent because I'm interested in the company.
You emailed your way in.
Yes, that's right. I didn't bust down the doors. I had to go through some security protocols, but I got in.
But first, I want to talk about Amazon's drones. And this is one of those stories that I love in part because we have been covering this from the very beginning. Back in December 2013, I remember there was like a teaser of Jeff Bezos having some kind of big unveiling on 60 Minutes. Do you remember this? Like, we were tuning in. It was not just some random Bezos appearance on 60 Minutes. There was an indication that he was going to be revealing something big. Do you remember this?
Absolutely. And it plays into our theory, which I think Amazon may have gotten away from a little bit, but it seemed like every November, December.
Oh, right.
Remember, Amazon would come out with this wild and blockbuster story, basically just to drum up interest around Amazon heading into the shopping timeframe. And so this was, in many ways, a strategically placed interview with Jeff Bezos on 60 Minutes.
That's right. I forgot about that, but definitely a November, December tradition. So there he is at Amazon headquarters with Charlie Rose. And John, I went back and listened to the audio because obviously this ties into a big news story this week. But just to ground us in the history.
Yeah, 13 years ago.
13 years ago. Let's get a little bit of a sense for what that was like. This is Jeff Bezos and Charlie Rose.
Let me show you something.
Oh, man. Oh, my God.
These are octocopters.
Yeah.
These are effectively drones, but there's no reason that they can't be used as delivery vehicles. Take a look up here so I can show you how it works.
All right. We're talking about delivery here.
We're talking about delivery. So there's an item going into the vehicle. I know this looks like science fiction. It's not.
Wow.
This is early. This is still years away. Drops the package.
There's the package.
Come and get your package. And we can do half-hour delivery.
Half-hour delivery.
Half-hour delivery. And we can carry objects, we think, up to 5 pounds, which covers 86% of the items that we deliver.
And what is the range?
So that is Jeff Bezos and Charlie Rose on 60 Minutes back in December 2013, almost 13 years ago. Jeff Bezos was pretty careful. I listened to exactly what he said. He said, this could be 4 or 5 years optimistically. He was very clear that this was not going to be that holiday season by any means. And FAA approvals and technology development, it took a long time. And of course, Amazon has been testing this and rolling it out selectively in a few different hubs in different parts of the country. But this week, they effectively finally reached the moment that Jeff Bezos predicted back then. They're doing a national rollout. They're going to be reaching nearly 500 cities and towns across the country by the end of this year. Really kind of a watershed moment in this crazy vision. I mean, I remember the reaction to this, and me included. It was like, what are you talking about? You're going to shove a package into the belly of a drone and have it fly across the landscape and drop it in somebody's backyard? Jeff Bezos, you have truly lost it. That was what was going through my mind at the time. And here we are.
Well, since then, a number of companies are also doing this.
Oh, yeah.
And so it has, I wouldn't say this has gone mainstream, though. This still seems like very much a niche offering. The promise is there, but this expansion, we'll see how well it takes off.
So to speak.
So to speak.
Yeah, so we know that it will be in cities soon, including Chicago, Syracuse, Cleveland, Atlanta, and Boise, those metro areas. And just to be clear, when they say 500 U.S. cities and towns, those are the cities covered by specific hubs. So it's not 500 hubs around the country.
Right. So Northeast Ohio probably has 100 cities within the Cleveland hub.
Exactly. So that is something that gives a little bit of a better sense for the scope of it. And drones primarily fly in the suburbs to avoid the tall buildings and the crowded airspace that's in dense urban areas. And I actually was talking with some of the Amazon folks, and this is something that's not been reported widely. We got this in our story, but they're delivering and creating hubs for Prime Air, this drone system, both at same-day delivery sites and at larger robotic fulfillment centers. So that really opens up the inventory that they can pull from. And they say it's effectively millions of potential items that they can grab and deliver as long as they're under about 5 pounds.
Which surprises me that in 13 years of development, they haven't been able to increase the payload that these drones can carry. Although Bezos said in the interview that it represents a lot of their products, but I would still think that they would be able to transport slightly heavier products over the course of 13 years of development. But obviously that wasn't their number one challenge they were trying to overcome, was the weight.
Right. I think the regulation
was
technology.
huge.
And if you look at that early octocopter that Bezos showed to Charlie Rose, I mean, it was rudimentary. It had like stilts around it, that it was standing on. You compare that now to what they've got. I mean, the drone has really advanced over those 13 years. Do you remember this? Back in the day, we got a tip that there was a drone facility for Amazon somewhere like out in eastern Washington, not quite eastern Washington.
Yeah, I think it was out by Duval and Carnation. Yeah.
And we had a reporter go out there and drive a car and figure out where it was and talk to them. I mean, like, this was a big
Yeah, we were trying
deal.
to chase down more information around this.
And in fact, I think we confirmed it by looking at Google satellite imagery and seeing a drone in flight at this site. At least that's what we thought it was. So this service is free for Prime members on orders of $50 or more. It's $2.99 for Prime orders below that, and it's $4.99 for non-members. So you pay a little bit of a premium if you don't hit an order minimum.
And do you
on
need to
drones.
have some sort of parameters in terms of where the package is being dropped off?
Yes, you do. I've written about this before. I don't remember the specifics, but you need to have a clear space, and they walk you through it. There's a lot of FAQs that they give you when you make an order for a drone delivery. And one of them is making sure you have enough clear space, a clear target for the drone to drop on. And at one point...
What could possibly go wrong? Right? I mean, I see dogs attacking it. I see power lines. I see people just messing with them. Look what happens to the Lime bikes around Seattle. I mean, and where those things end up.
Yes.
People just like being destructive.
Yes, I'm sure
And
that's going to be...
I don't know. I don't think it's an interesting idea, as Jeff Bezos said, it's not sci-fi. I think it kind of is sci-fi. I'm not certain it's a real business or problem that needs solved.
So this to you is not a staple of
This is not going to be Amazon's
future.
fourth pillar business is drone delivery. I don't think so. I just don't see it.
It's still...
I think we could go back to one of our podcasts at the time, because I'm sure we were talking about this in 2013 or so. But I'm sure, because with all of these technologies, because I had the same discussion around, especially after our Pittsburgh experience, driving in an autonomous vehicle on the road, about how dangerous it was back in the day. And that was 2018 roughly. Yeah. I like, this is going to take forever to get there. And because of the regulation, it's just, I just don't see it.
Driving around San Francisco in a Waymo and feeling great about it. So it does happen.
It does happen. It gets there. I'm suspect on this one.
I think that it's still a bit of a novelty, not so much because of the technology or the hurdles, but because it's just one small package at a time.
Yeah, what do I have to do? I have to go and map my backyard, put my parameters in for my house.
No, I don't know the specifics on that.
And then...
You might be making a leap there. We haven't dug into the specifics because it's not in Seattle. That we should say, though, too, we don't know when it's going to be in Seattle. So that is an open question. By the way, 2 behind-the-scenes things that just relate to what you just said and to what we're talking about. Number one, longtime listeners will know that we lost much of the audio from those early podcasts in the 2013, 2014, 2015 timeframe at Cairo Radio, when the podcast was a radio show that we did. I was working with Claude, and it figured out a alternative URL pattern that I'm able to use to plug into archive.org and find, I think, all of the audio files to download.
Well, I know you've done this in one case for me because I asked for something.
Yes, that's how I found that.
And
asking for that
right.
prompted me to try something a little bit different in Claude. And I think I need to spend a weekend on this.
So if you want to go back
No.
and listen to all of our 2014 episodes of the GeekWire
Nobody
podcast.
else out there is going to do that, but just think about
the historical
all of this
archive of it.
for
Like,
us. For
it
us.
would be nice to go back and see what we had to say
Yes.
about this at the time that it was launched, or what that Bezos was talking about it on 60 Minutes.
And the beauty of this is that we're now able to create a repository of it, get it transcribed, and throw it into AI and just have it produce insights and analysis. Okay, so the other thing was, in listening to that audio, there was a moment at the end that was not related necessarily to drones, but that in hindsight was a classic Bezos moment. So I wanted to round out our discussion here by just playing you that. And note here the classic Charlie Rose 60 Minutes tone in his voice. He's got the 60 Minutes pitch. It's like you could plant different voices into this kind of tenor of their voice. Listen.
With the drones possibly taking flight in the not-too-distant future, Amazon is raising the stakes in the race for faster delivery. Jeff Bezos believes the company has no choice.
Companies have short lifespans, Charlie, and Amazon will be disrupted one day.
And you worry about that?
I don't worry about it because I know it's inevitable. Companies come and go. And the companies that are the shiniest and most important of any era, you wait a few decades and they're gone.
And your job is to make sure that you delay that date.
I would love for it to be after I'm dead.
Oh my God. The line, I'd love for it to be after I'm dead, the pause, and the iconic Bezos cackle, followed by the 60 Minutes ticker. What more could you want in a show?
Great audio. Much better audio than our Elon podcast time.
All right, coming up next, what happened when a reporter put an AirTag in a rare book and tracked its location to a secret Amazon facility? We'll talk about that fascinating story coming up next. All right, welcome back. It's Todd Bishop and John Cook. I got to say, John, the story that caught my attention this week more than any other was by Emanuel Mayberg. Correcting myself after the fact, that would be Mayberg, M-A-I-B-E-R-G, the 404 Media reporter and co-founder. He's been looking into this whole issue of bulk purchases of rare books by AI companies to scan them and put them into their model training. And the reason this is done is because I guess a lot of the public information or the online information now is kind of being poisoned in part by the fact that so much of it is being AI generated. And so you can kind of get into a little bit of a dilution of the power of these AI models if you're training them on AI content. And so companies are going back and finding older books that have not been put into these models and that are not, of course, themselves generated by AI. And after he wrote a story about this, he got contacted by a bookseller who got one of these bulk orders. And
they said it's surprising to get these orders because the companies don't negotiate on price. They're ordering very rare books that in bulk. And I think that's an interesting component of this.
Exactly. And so one of these booksellers got one of these orders, got in touch with this reporter, and they agreed to put an AirTag in one of the books.
I would have loved to have been part of this
discussion
and how they were going to put it in there, and did they carve out some pages? And
that was not in the story.
Yeah,
they didn't explain how they did it. I wondered if they kind of tucked it into the spine. You know how you might have a little separation between the back edges of the pages and the spine.
Yeah,
in
just
some
fascinating.
Books. Yeah, so they tracked it. It went from a California airport to Milwaukee, sat 2 weeks in a distribution warehouse outside Kenosha, Wisconsin, and then went west by truck to an overnight stop in Grand Junction, Colorado, and then ended at an Amazon warehouse in Las Vegas. And at first,
it went.
Yes.
It went on this Wild ride.
Yeah.
West to east and then east back to west. Yeah.
Whoever's running their logistics does not know what they're doing because it's like all over the place. We don't know if it was a third-party shipper. At least I can't remember from the story if it was.
They should have just had the drone deliver it and drop it off there.
So initially he was confused because this center is primarily known as like a print-on-demand place. So like, why would you have rare books at a print-on-demand, Kindle Direct Publishing kind of place? But he realized from employee forums that there's a separate facility inside this building on the north end where they scan books, they cut them apart first, and then they scan them. And now Amazon didn't deny this in its statements, but Amazon also was not forthcoming about the reasons that they're scanning these books. The assumption, based on all sorts of clues, including the fact that some of the employees scan the ISBN codes, the barcodes, it seems like they're logging these books in some ways, and it fits the pattern of an AI company trying to systematically work through every known book that they can. And so the assumption is that it's training some kind of AI model. Of course, Amazon is partnered closely with Anthropic, which has gotten in hot water over this practice. That said, one of the safe harbors in the ruling that the judge came out with in that case was, hey, if you're destroying the book in the process of scanning it, it's actually okay because you're not going to reuse it. Sort of this weird legal technicality, which is kind of perverse, especially to book lovers. At any rate, fascinating story, and I loved it for the reporting technique that was put into it.
So what do you think's really going on?
I think it's probably AI. I'm less convinced of that than most other people. And I will tell you, I don't think 404 Media definitively proved that it's for AI. And yet their headline and their lead and a lot of their language, it felt like some of the reporters' hedging in the story was lost. And it just got translated, oh yeah, this is an AI book scanning operation. Having covered Amazon for as long as we have, I think one of the lessons that we've taken away is it may be for something completely different than anybody ever expects, that is not obvious. It's just Amazon does weird stuff, and they're willing to be misunderstood for long periods of time. I think it could be something completely different. What do you think?
The evidence certainly would indicate AI purposes and training. So I would see why they would maybe make that leap. But yeah, you're right. We don't know. I think the end result is we're not 100% sure here, but certainly interesting the lengths that these companies are going to just to capture the planet's data.
Yes. This whole technique, I did some research, and there's a precedent here in a Seattle nonprofit called the Basal Action Network. They started planting GPS trackers long before AirTags in old printers and monitors back in 2014, and they were tracing where e-waste actually goes. And they found that so much of this was basically exported and not truly recycled in the ways that the companies that took them in promised. And so it was kind of some investigative watchdog reporting by this nonprofit in a much similar way, but they had to team up with MIT on cellular trackers that needed a data plan. And it wasn't exactly the AirTag era.
And it's getting easier and easier to do this sort of tracking. I mean, you think about even the watermarking technology within AI that you're now able to track, AI systems. Yeah, I think it's fascinating how companies are tracking data now.
It's funny, and maybe I shouldn't bring this up, John, but I do want to mention that we ran into a bit of a hurdle this week when someone who was inclined to provide us, an anonymous person who was inclined to provide us with an internal memo related to a story that we were working on, held off out of fear that there might be some kind of watermarking technology embedded in the text. And if you followed that Anthropic story from a couple weeks ago, it's not so much that there's hidden symbols or something. It's more that they can use AI to generate unique strings of text that can be linked to specific people. And so I hope this doesn't have a chilling effect, obviously in a much bigger way on true whistleblowers, which is not what this was, but true whistleblowers in government where they're worried about leaking documents because it could be traced back to them. But I guess that's a tangent from the story we're talking about, but it's a brave new world.
It is.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So fascinating story from 404 Media, really a tip of the hat to them. I was just sitting back in admiration from what they did here from a reporting standpoint. And it kind of made me think, like, what could we do? Not necessarily with an AirTag per se, but like, how could you think about using common, everyday, widely available technology in a way that could illuminate trends and patterns in the world around us? And to me, this is a fascinating
We just go
example.
plant sensors and AirTags and every major tech company around the planet.
While remaining both legal and ethical.
Yes, right.
I guess that would be the caveat. Hey, coming up next, we're going to go inside Anduril in the Seattle region. Welcome back. It's Todd Bishop with John Cook. John, we have covered the story of Anduril Industries, the defense contractor, now for a few months based on your own interest and your own digging, really, into their presence here in Seattle, starting on the waterfront. And just for people who don't know, Anduril is a defense startup. It builds autonomous weapons and surveillance systems that are run by AI, everything from drones to submarines to border towers, like autonomous border towers.
They have so many products. It's led by Palmer Luckey, who's a flamboyant, charismatic, controversial CEO. You probably have seen him in his Hawaiian shirts, and he's an outspoken upstart in the very staid defense industry.
So you emailed your way into this office, as we
I
were
guess.
saying earlier.
Well, I mean, we should stop back because the way I got onto this story was doing some digging around the old Foss shipyard, which is located on the Lake Washington Ship Canal, which we referenced earlier in the podcast, which is on the other side of where the GeekWire offices are located. And we got onto some information that Anduril had taken over that facility. And so that was a story we published back in the spring. And since then, I've just become interested in this company and defense tech. And so I've been a bit persistent with the folks over there because this company has grown to be a pretty large organization in the Seattle area. They have over 500 employees split between offices in Seattle and Bellevue. They have a testing ground out in Carnation, Washington, where they bring in military leaders and troops to test out either their night vision goggles or sensors that they're testing. And so it is a vast operation, and that doesn't even include the maritime operation at the old Foss shipyard, which originally got me onto this story, which they're not talking as much about.
After we recorded this episode this week, we learned why they're not talking as much about this. In fact, Anduril has moved out of the old Foss shipyard. The Navy canceled the unmanned vessel program that the site was planned for, and Anduril was left off the list of 7 vendors selected for the replacement program. The company says the shipyard was always basically just a handful of people, and its broader Seattle growth continues. John's story on this specific development is in the show notes.
So the Connected Warfare Group is actually based in the Seattle area, and they have a former Microsoft executive, Tom Keene, who leads that group, and he's a cloud edge computing guy, super geek, who's extremely interested in how he's taking all of this data and information and pushing it out to the edge in these cases being military and defense applications. So it's everything from communication devices to, as I said, night goggles to drones to submersibles that are underneath our seafloor.
My understanding is that they had not had a reporter inside this facility before.
That is what I was told, yes. So it was cool to look around and see what they're working on and get a sense of what this type of company looks like.
So you wrote that it was unmarked. It wasn't like there was a big blaring sign out front saying, "Hey,
no, in fact,
Anduril's
you know,
here."
when you show up at a new office, I always look in the industry directory to make sure I'm in the right building, first off, because it can get confusing when you're in downtown Bellevue or downtown Seattle. And So I started looking around and I was like, oh, they're not listed here. Maybe. And I walked actually outside of the building to make sure I was in the right spot, checked the address, and came back in. And by that time I texted my PR representative who came down and greeted me. And they're not hiding anything. I wouldn't say they're
low key.
Yeah, it's
under the radar.
just kind of low key. And you can imagine that. Obviously, we wrote earlier this summer about some protests that were occurring at the Seattle operation. So, I mean, it's a controversial company for sure. I mean, they're using AI to create new weapons systems. That's not without controversy.
You got them to respond on that point, and they said that they respect free speech, but find it, quote, perplexing when people choose to protest a company dedicated to supporting the very military that safeguards those rights.
I think Palmer Luckey, the CEO, probably wrote that direct response for any time they have protests.
So you went inside and you tried out a bunch of different things, right? Or you saw a bunch of different things.
I saw a bunch of things.
You tried out the goggles.
Yes, I tried out both the night vision system that they have and what they call their Eagle Eye, which is an augmented reality system, which frankly comes out of some Microsoft research and technology that Anduril acquired about 18 months ago. And this was a really interesting system because you can imagine being a soldier on the battlefield with this display, and they're actually partnered with Oakley, so Oakley sunglasses. So that's kind of the form fit. Obviously, they're ballistically tested and they're set up for harsh conditions. But you can see a visual system in front of you. You can actually see the mapping technology. You can see where you're at on the map in relation to enemy combatants. You can actually order a drone from Anduril to come and confront those enemy combatants. It was pretty wild to see this in action.
Sounds a little bit like Iron Man in some ways.
It was very much like Iron Man.
So for people who did not follow this, you mentioned the Microsoft connection. I covered this back in the day. This was previously an application of HoloLens. In fact, its challenges at Microsoft, as I understand it, was one of the reasons that HoloLens kind of fell by the wayside at Microsoft. It was the integrated visual augmentation system. And Microsoft really struggled with this. They had nausea and eye strain, and it ended up getting transferred to Anduril in 2025. And about 100 local engineers from Anduril came with it. And here you have it. And now it's known as Eagle Eye. It's the follow-on. You got to try it, and they would not let you take pictures of it.
No, they let me take pictures of Eagle Eye. They wouldn't let me take photos of the calibration system where they were showing the eyewear being tested on the system. They had a robotic system. They had a robotic system where they were testing the glass. They didn't want me to take any photos of that. But yeah, to your point, this is obviously a hard challenge to solve. They are very proud at Anduril about doing things with speed and low cost and disruption. And that just speaks to this program that was at Microsoft that really couldn't get off the ground. And here at Anduril, they are prototyping it and they're hoping to get it into the U.S. Army next year.
One of the things that struck me from your story was just the rapid growth and under the radar, as we've been saying. As you mentioned, they've got about 560 employees across Bellevue and downtown Seattle. That's up from about 30 people 4 years ago. And Tom Keene, who you talked to, previously worked at Microsoft, he said they could get up to about 1,000 here in the future.
Yeah, and I pressed on that because I'm like, okay, and what time frame? And he said, well, it's about as fast as we can hire. And I said, okay, realistically. And he said, probably in the next couple of years. But even so, this is becoming a large engineering center here for Anduril. They have about 10,000 employees worldwide, as I understand it.
Very cool that you got a glimpse inside. I will link from the show notes to your story for some of your takeaways from your experience. And in fact, John, this topic, Anduril, is the subject of this week's GeekWire Trivia Challenge.
I think I already know what it's going to be.
Okay, we'll see. Here we go.
Pop quiz, hotshot.
This is GeekWire's Trivia Challenge.
Wouldn't you prefer a good game of chess?
Palmer Luckey, the Anduril founder, has said his real project isn't just building weapons, it's making the defense industry cool again. He's called himself a propagandist, and he means that as a compliment to himself, like in a positive way. And to that end, Anduril opened an actual online merch store, something pretty rare for a defense contractor.
They're a little bit of an oddball company.
Yes.
Yeah, their motto is "Don't work at Anduril." So they want a very specific type of person, obviously.
They put something in this merch store that I'm pretty sure nobody has ever sold before. Was it A, trimmings from Palmer Lucky's goatee, sealed in a vial with a certificate of authenticity?
That's hilarious, but gross.
B, naming rights on a deployed drone airframe. Your name flies real missions, and the only downside is that Anduril can't tell you where it is, what it did, or when it's coming back. So your name, you get naming rights.
These are
on
really
a drone.
good, Todd.
Okay.
I think these are your best answers that you've ever done.
C, recovered crash debris from Anduril's own R&D test flights, actual wreckage, vacuum sealed and bagged. Or D, a randomized thermal print from a sentry tower. This is Anduril's autonomous surveillance masts on the southern border. So basically it takes a thermal image and it gives you a print, and you get to see whatever animal walked by that night on the southern border.
Wow.
So A, trimmings from the goatee. B, naming rights on a deployed drone airframe. C, crash debris from an R&D test flight of a drone. Or D, a randomized thermal print from a sentry tower. One of these is actually true.
Gosh, these are really, really good.
I worked on this.
Palmer Luckey has a big ego, certainly, but I don't think big enough to do the trimming. So I'm going to exclude that. That's kind of gross. Yeah, that's just kind of gross. So I'm going to exclude that one. They kind of celebrate failures. So the crash debris I'm going to put into the running, but I'm not guessing that yet.
Okay.
Because you can't progress without having some failures. So I can see that being in their culture and DNA. The naming rights isn't something like you would buy in a merch store, right?
Well,
so
but
I'm
like they do this at the zoo. They do this at the zoo. It could be in a store.
Okay.
You would name an animal, or you.
I was thinking it would be more of a physical item, so I was
Sure,
I was going to exclude the naming rights
do that if you want.
based on that factor.
At your own
and then
risk.
then what was the last one? It was
a random thermal print from the sentry tower.
That's a pretty controversial component of their business, frankly. And
on the border.
Yeah, and one of their oldest running technologies,
I think it was the original.
frankly. Yeah. Gosh. I'm going to go with the thermal print.
You're going to go with the thermal print? No.
It's the crash debris.
It's the crash debris.
The crash debris. I was between those two.
It's C. Recovered
Okay,
crash debris
okay.
from Anduril's own R&D test flights. They actually sold vacuum-sealed bags with pieces of crashed drones from their test flights. They called them relics. Some were actually sold as blind bags, this tradition, where you had no idea what you were going to get, whether it was some boring piece of scrap metal or like a recognizable part, like a fuel cap.
Well, Anduril is big on making sure that U.S. and its allies are well prepared for the future military engagements. What's stopping our enemies from buying up all this material and analyzing it and coming up with a better system?
Maybe.
Hopefully they don't have any strategic technology within the vacuum sealed mystery bag.
I'm sure it was well scrubbed and well chosen.
Yeah, I would think so.
Hey,
Great question,
Yeah,
Todd. That one made me think.
Good. Well, thanks for sharing your experience. And as I mentioned, I'll share a link from the show notes to the story that you wrote about your visit to Anduril. Thanks for listening, everybody. Curt Milton edited this episode. Until next time, I'm Todd Bishop.
And I'm John Cook.
We'll be back next week with a new episode of the GeekWire podcast.